Ever wondered how real estate agency representation began? In this episode, we will discuss the history of agency and the different types of agency. Buying and selling real estate has become more challenging than ever in recent years. Sellers are stuck, buyers face historic affordability issues, and now how you work with real estate agents is changing. Join me on this eye opening journey where I'll explain everything you need to know about working with real estate agents and the changes ahead in this series. It's all about full transparency, ensuring you feel informed and confident every step of the way. I'm Gina Fye, a real estate broker licensed in North and South Carolina. I'm a huge advocate for full transparency, the good, the bad, and the ugly. It's true, the Dalai Lama said, a lack of transparency results in distrust and a deep sense of insecurity. However, in today's fast paced society, it's become increasingly difficult to have the in depth conversations that true transparency requires. So I hope you stick with me on this journey. If you're wondering about the recent lawsuit, the core issue revolves around the concept of steering from the mandatory cooperation and compensation rule. To understand the current situation, we need to look back at the history of agency relationships and government regulations. History often repeats itself, and I believe we are on the brink of facing challenges similar to those of the 1980s that could ultimately impact buyers and sellers in ways they will not be prepared for. Let's take a quick look into the past to understand how we got here. Back in the late 1800s, a groundbreaking shift occurred in real estate. Agents started collaborating to speed up property sales. The spirit of cooperation led to the efficient systems we have today. But here's where it gets interesting. Let's dive deeper into how these changes have shaped modern agency. Let's set the stage. It was a free-for-all until 1917 when the California Association successfully lobbied for the first state licensing laws for brokers. Additionally, all agents operated under the buyer beware principle. This meant the agent assisting the buyer was actually a subagent of the seller, representing the seller's interest. Even as late as 1979, the California Real Estate Commissioner was reminding agents that both the listing and the selling agents owed their allegiance to the sellers. In 1983, the FTC discovered that 75% of buyers thought the showing agent represented them. In reality, the agent was a subagent of the seller, working for the seller's interest. In 1985, the National Association of Realtors, motivated by lawsuits in the FTC white paper, formed a committee to address agency issues. This was the beginning of exclusive buyer agency as buyers began to seek independent representation. By 1988, the California legislature took the lead, enacting laws to define agency relationships and address buyers' need for representation. This was a pivotal moment post the FTC white paper as states started updating their agency laws. In 1993, Colorado became the first state to allow non-agency known as transaction brokerage. By 1999, 12 states had adopted legislation making non-agency the default relationship. In 2008, the DOJ filed a lawsuit claiming that NAR promoted anti-competitive practices and inflated commissions. The proposed settlement required NAR-owned multiple listing services to change many of their policies regarding home listing sites and provide equal access to data via internet data exchange and virtual office website feeds. The DOJ believed this would empower consumers to have more control over their search process and educate themselves about the market. The expectation was that this settlement would lead to more choices, better services, and lower commission rates for consumers. This 2008 agreement concluded in 2018. Following this, the FTC and DOJ held a joint workshop on competition in real estate. The conclusion of the 2008 settlement agreement opened the door for more lawsuits like the one filed in 2019 by Christopher Merle. In 2020, the DOJ filed another lawsuit and signed a settlement with NAR to change certain compensation practice policies. Sorry, tongue-tied again. 3 key items from the initial settlement which NAR adopted included 1. Buyer compensation must be publicly available and transparent. 2. Buyer agents cannot claim their service is free. And 3. With the seller's approval, a licensed agent will have access to lockboxes even if the agent does not subscribe to the MLS. However, in 2021, the DOJ withdrew from the signed settlement agreement. This matter is currently still being appealed. And that brings us to today, where the new 2024 settlement scraped the transparency requirement. The way we work is changing nationally. The good news is that North and South Carolina legislators have been among the few states that have prioritized buyer representation and transparent negotiable fees for well over 20 years. So for us, as of now, there will only be a couple of changes that some will need to adapt to. One being agency agreements must be signed before viewing a property. Exceptions may apply depending on state law, such as for open houses or when the listing agent shows you the property. Buyer agent compensation can no longer be displayed in the multiple listing service. Legally, upon first substantial contact, we are required by law to explain the Working with Real Estate Agents brochure to any potential client or customer. Fully understanding who represents whom can be a game changer in your real estate journey. Think of it this way. When you have an agent solely focused on your interest, you are equipped with a dedicated advocate committed to your success. When the real estate firm and its agent represent only you in the transaction, this is known as single agency. They must act in your best interest, remain loyal to you, follow your lawful instructions, and provide you with all known material facts. They are prohibited from disclosing any confidential information about you. Dual agency introduces a potential conflict of interest when a single agent from the firm represents both the buyer and the seller, as loyalty is divided between you and the firm's other client. Designated dual agency helps reduce this conflict. In this arrangement, one agent in the firm represents only the seller, while another agent represents only the buyer. Dual agency scenarios are known to be a common source of legal disputes in real estate transactions. In South Carolina, there is also transaction brokerage, which we will cover in a few slides. As an unrepresented seller, you may choose to sell your property without hiring a real estate agent, often referred to as for sale by owner. In North Carolina, if you sell a property without an agent, any agent involved in your transaction will represent only the buyer in their best interest. In South Carolina, they might serve as a transaction broker, assisting the buyer as a customer. As an unrepresented buyer, you can still work with the listing agent's firm and its agents. However, they will act as the seller subagent, or in South Carolina, they could serve as a transaction broker. In North Carolina, seller subagents must disclose any information about you to the seller, including personal, financial, or confidential information to aid the seller in the sale of the property. While the agent must be fair to you and disclose any known material facts, their primary goal is to secure the best possible price and terms for the seller. Note, most firms avoid cooperating with seller subagents outside of their own firm due to liability issues. What's the difference between a customer and a client? The customer is unrepresented with no agency agreement in place. They will receive only statutory duties from the brokerage or agent and is described by the state. The real estate agent cannot provide advice or counsel to the customers if it breaches their duties to the seller or causes the agent to act preferentially for the buyer. Examples of where you would be a customer: attending an open house, touring or requesting information about a property directly from the listing agent. A client has an agency agreement in place with the brokerage or agent. The agent owes fiduciary duties to the client, including loyalty, confidentiality, and full disclosure. The agent can provide advice, counsel, and advocacy throughout the transaction process. Understanding the difference between a customer and a client is crucial for making informed decisions in your real estate journey. Having an agency agreement in place ensures you receive dedicated representation and guidance tailored to your best needs. South Carolina transaction brokerage option, introduced in 2017, allows buyers and sellers to work with a licensed real estate professional without needing to establish a client-agent relationship. This change marks a departure from previous regulations that required agents to have a client in every transaction. Before this, if a buyer didn't sign an exclusive buyer agency agreement, the agent was automatically considered a subagent of the seller, with loyalty to the seller and liability to the broker in charge on the listing side. Now, with transaction brokerage, agents can facilitate transactions without representing either party. However, remember, this doesn't mean that the agent will protect your interest or offer special services without an exclusive agreement. Any additional services must be outlined in the South Carolina Transaction Brokerage Agreement. Transaction brokers can be particularly useful for individuals buying or selling for sale by owners who need help with paperwork and closing procedures, as well as for builders and investors. As we conclude, remember, it's always best to sign an agency agreement with a real estate agent before disclosing any confidential information. Make sure you fully understand the type of agency agreement you're entering into before sharing any confidential information or assuming they represent you. If you don't, the agent might be obligated to share your information, compromising your negotiation power. This is especially important when attending open houses, dealing with new construction, or contacting the listing agent directly. Remember, the listing agent represents the seller and is obligated to tell the seller anything they learn about you. Thanks for joining me on this journey behind the scenes of real estate. I hope you feel more informed and confident about the buying and selling process. If you found this video helpful, make sure to hit the like button, subscribe, and tap the notification bell so you never miss an update. There's so much more to uncover about the real estate world, and I can't wait to share it with you. And see you in the next video.